On 3FM 92.7. Now, I'm sure you've already seen our posts on social media. We're asking you to also weigh in on Global Info Analytics' latest poll results that are out, this time in connection with the presidential election. A lot of you have sent in your reactions. We'll be getting into some of that in due course. But I do have a special guest in the studio with me. Musa Dankwa is the Executive Director of Global Info Analytics. And they're behind this latest poll. Musa Dankwa, good to see you. Good morning.
Good morning to you.
One might say Global Info Analytics de Asembeba, but you're back again. You're back again with your wahala, as we say. This latest poll results that we have been perusing and dissecting all morning long is in connection with the presidential elections. Listeners have a lot of questions. They want to know the parameters, sample size, the most topical issues that Ghanaians were concerned about. We want to get into all of that. So set the scene for us. When did you conduct this particular poll? What were you seeking to achieve? Talk to us about the sample size, and then we'll get into the nitty-gritties, if you will.
All right. Thank you very much for having me this morning. Global Info Analytics, I think, let me clarify one thing today. We are not a think tank.
Okay.
We are a private company. So, and as part of our work that we do what we call political risk forecasting for investor clients.
Political risk forecasting.
Not only in Ghana, but also across Africa and many other places. And the work that we do requires us to do this polling.
Okay.
So what we give to Ghanaians for free is a byproduct of what we are actually set up to do as a company.
I see.
So we cannot mislead Ghanaians and mislead investors who buy data from us. So that is the point people should understand.
Okay.
How do we get funding for this? The clients who are paying us for the private job, we use that money to do this CSR, what we call it, corporate social responsibility.
Right.
Our contribution to democracy and the political discourse in this country. Our sampling size is determined by a formula. And the good thing is that mathematics and statistics, you can't just knock your stomach and say this is it.
Right.
You can prove it or it will be disproven. There are laid down formula that has been prescribed for use to calculate the sample size. And the sample size we had this time was 6,128.
6,128 Ghanaian citizens.
Citizens.
Okay.
Who are voting age.
Sure.
This number was selected as based on the following parameters. There are possibly going to be about 18.5 million voters by the next election. So we must base the sample on the estimated people who will be registered to vote.
So a total voting population of about 18.5 million, and you've got a sample size of about 6,128. One might say a drop in the ocean.
That's where I'm coming from.
Okay.
Now, when you have your population, you know your population, 18.5 million. The most important thing you want to know is what level of or margin of error do you want to entertain in your report.
Right.
We said there are polls who do 5% margin of error, 3%, 4%. We chose 1.66% margin of error. The smaller the margin of error, the better the outcome.
Okay.
The higher the margin of error, it means the results could be as high with plus or minus the 5%.
Got it.
So what we have in the data, it is plus or minus 1.66% margin of error. It's a range of outcome.
Okay.
And then you said, what level of confidence do you want to have in your report?
That's right.
Others choose 95% confidence level. We have chosen 99% confidence level.
What does that mean?
It means that at 99% sure that if you run this poll again and again, the results will be within the margin we have given you.
Okay.
There is 99% chance that if you run the poll again and again within a time frame, you'll get the same result. Now, these variables, the population size, 18.5, our margin of error of 1.66, and then the confidence level of 99% is what will give you the sample size you need to interview.
Okay, so this is the formula that you use.
Absolutely.
So that you don't have to ask all 18.5.
No, absolutely no.
Possible voters.
Now, that is the first step.
Okay.
Once you are done with the sample number, if you decide to put the 5,000 sample in Kumasi and the remaining 1,000 to Accra and other places, what would you get? You will get a view that is dominated by Ashanti region.
Okay.
So that's not good enough. The sample size is big. Okay, we can even choose 100,000 samples. It is how you deploy the sample size. Does it represent those who actually vote in this country?
Right.
So once we have the 6,128, then we ask ourselves, how many voters are there in Greater Accra relative to the entire country? Say 20%. It means that 20% of your sample must be deployed in Greater Accra.
Okay.
How many are there in Ashanti region? 18%. It means the 18% must go to Ashanti region. Central region, X percentage. Western region, so we share the 6,128 in proportion to each region's contribution to the National Voting Register. Methodology. We haven't finished yet. Once we are done with the sample at the regional level, we use simulator to select 30% of each region's constituencies that would then receive this sample for the interview. So if you run 30% of areas in Greater Accra, you get close to 10 constituencies in Greater Accra.
Okay.
If you run the same 30% to Ashanti region, you get 14 seats, 14 constituencies. So we apply that uniform across all the regions. Every region is guaranteed at least 2 constituencies in the sample. So those who have 6 constituencies and 7 and 8, they still get 2.
Okay, so for example, if there are 6 and there are 10 and you want 30%, so you'll be looking at 3.
Yes.
Makes sense.
Yes.
Okay.
Once we have picked randomly those constituencies, then we say, okay, we have picked 14 from Ashanti region. How do we distribute the Ashanti region quota to these 14? Because if you don't use the weighting of those constituencies again in your next step, you might give Asawasi 300 out of the 1,000 vote. Meanwhile, they should have gotten maybe 110. Afram Plains, Secretary, a very small constituency.
That's right.
So if you don't use the weight of their vote when sharing the Ashanti share of the vote, you give them more than necessary, which means that the support for the party that wins that region will be inflated. If you give Asawasi much more than they deserve, it will be inflated. It will inflate NDC support in the region. So we used the weight of these constituencies again to distribute the regional quota to these constituencies. Third step, we don't end there. When you have Asawasi 110 constituency sample to do you go to Abuabo, number 1, and do everything there? But the votes in Abuabo or Asawasi is not only held in Abuabo.
Okay.
Asawasi has a number of electoral areas, don't they? So we again randomly pick at least 3 from Asawasi.
Okay.
3 electoral areas. When we have picked the 3 electoral areas, then we say, what is the voting population of this electoral area relative to the ones we've selected? So the share of Asawasi is then again distributed into the electoral areas based on the size of that electoral area in terms of vote. That is how you make the sample representative. Now, why should 6,128 represent Ghanaians? It's 18.6.
That's right.
How do we go and interview everybody when we want to know their views? It doesn't work like that in statistics.
Okay.
Anybody who says anything different is not probably being honest. Because it's been proven statistically for several years, hundreds of years, in fact 200 years, or it's been done for several years from the US, that you don't have to interview everybody. But once the sample that you pick represent the people that you are targeting, the views of the sample will represent those of the larger population. Let me ask you a question.
Sure.
When you are going to prepare a soup, you buy your ingredients.
That's right.
You put the pot on fire.
Correct.
You put water, you put this, and then you mix things up. The methodology is the ingredient that I've just told you.
That's right.
The water, all are the ingredients. When the soup boils, you've put salt, everything is there. And you want to taste how the soup tastes. Do you drink the entire pot?
Absolutely
or you
not.
take a spoon and fetch part of the soup and taste it?
Yes.
If the spoon tastes nice, it means the rest of the pot is what?
Tasty. You can gauge by that spoonful.
Absolutely. That is the logic of polling and sampling. As simple as that.
Very fascinating indeed. And thank you so much, Mr. Dankwa, for laying that background for us. Often we get questions about the sample size, what was taken into consideration, the regional breakdown, and so on and so forth. So I think that this has been some very good education about the methodology. So this doesn't happen in a vacuum, listeners. And for those of you who had questions, there's a method to the madness, if you will, for lack of a better expression. You don't have to speak to all 18.5 million voting citizens to get the information that you need.
I mean, if I may give one example.
Sure.
There were 210,000 MPP delegates who were going to vote to elect their flag bearer. We interviewed 4,150 randomly across the country from 245 constituencies randomly. When we finished, the results that we got, it was just 1% difference from when the big number turned out to vote. That is sampling with perfection.
Well, let me also welcome into the conversation Mr. Courage Nobi. He's the Director of Communications for the Alan Tremanting Butterfly Movement. And he's on the line this morning. I'll say good morning to him, but we'll be carrying on with Musa Dankwa, getting into the nitty-gritty of this poll. Courage, good morning to you. Hope you're doing well.
Good morning, Ellen, and by God's grace, I'm very well. Good to hear your overly calm but enthusiastic and energetic self this morning.
Fantastic. Fantastic. I know you're sticking with us on this conversation. Musa Dankwa is here. He's the Executive Director of Global Info Analytics. We're about to get into that current poll, which puts Alan Tremanting at some 7.5% based on the findings of Global Analytics, Info Analytics. So, Courage, do stick with us, and we'll be bringing you into the conversation. And you two can weigh in on some of these findings. But, Musa, let's get into it. So, the sample size, as we know it, over 6,000 Ghanaians. And let's break it down. What are some of the metrics, some of the parameters, some of the questions that were posed? I know there were things such as the slogans that have come up, the issues that are most pressing for Ghanaians, jobs, all of that. Break that down for us, and let's take it from there.
You know, as posters,
and you can check that out also on Facebook. So we have some of the information that will be sliding through on Facebook, so you can follow along with the conversation.
You see, we have what we call our standing questions that we ask regardless of when we are polling. And these are questions around the direction of the country, the approval of the president's performance, corruption in the country today, standard of living of voters. And we also ask them about who they intend to vote for. So these are the core questions we do ask. But time to time, if there are burning issues in the country that we need to assess what is going on, we do add them as well. If you watch this poll, we added a question about LGBTQ bill.
Okay.
That was burning. So we wanted to see whether Ghanaians support the act that has been approved by Parliament. So these were the things that we took to the field. Now, the direction of the country is important for us because it tends to influence how people vote.
Right.
Also, people's standard of living is also an important question we do ask because it tends to influence how people vote.
Sure.
Corruption, it could have probably been, but at the moment it's down the ladder, so it's not really making a huge impact.
I'm surprised by that.
Yes, because there are many issues more than
the corruption.
Corruption.
Sure.
And then also, we ask people who they intend to vote for. And see, the way we do it is a very smart way. We do it using what we call unprompted recall.
Unprompted recall.
Recall, yes.
Okay.
It means we're not going to show you the people's faces or mention the names. Then you choose from. We don't do that anymore. We say, tell us who you want to vote for. Then we'll take the person in the box.
Okay, so whereas before you might have said, oh, these are the options, who would you
Yes.
allow them to flow?
Absolutely.
Okay.
What we've realized is that some people just go with, oh, you like this guy's face.
Okay.
That is not necessarily what he wants to do on election day.
Sure.
So, but the name that comes on your lips is much more reliable than when you pick from the paper or from the device. So we are now doing unprompted recall. So you are seeing the true reflection of the names people have on their mouths.
Okay.
And the smaller party that you're seeing, the number that they're getting, it reflects how people know them.
So that, we've got Courage on the line. So 7.3%, would you say that that's a significant number if you're using unprompted recall? That means top of mind, Alan Tremanting is there. Let me quickly ask, Courage, what did you make of that projection? 7.3%. Musa Dankwa is saying that they're currently using a mechanism called unprompted recall. So that top of mind, they're asking people that they're interviewing to let them know who it is that they're going to be voting for. What do you make of this?
Thank you very much once again, Ellen, and good morning to Mr. Dankwa in the studios. I think for us at the Movement for Change, this is encouraging. This is to tell us that what we are doing is yielding some results, and it is to also inform us that we need to do more. We need to push harder. We need to be more innovative with our approach, and we need to be a bit more aggressive, positively in what we are doing for the period that we have to be able to succeed in our objective of toppling the duopoly. As you remember, we've been in existence for 6 months. In that period, I think the January report will be getting about some 3%. 3 months down the line, 4% increase. For us, it's significant and it's encouraging. At least it means that what we are doing, many Ghanaians identify with it. They agree with us, and they are supporting us. And if we push, we can gain far more than we have now. We have some 8 months to the election.
That's right.
And so for us, this is refreshing, this is encouraging, and it tells us that we need to do more.
Absolutely. One might say that the Movement for Change is gaining momentum. But Musa Dankwa, let's now take it step by step. And again, you can follow on in the conversation on Facebook. Now, poll results, leading campaign promises. On the issue of which campaign promises will influence voters in the December election, 48% said the 24-hour economy, digitalization, 29% Great Transformational Plan, GTP, that's the Movement for Change, 6%, while 17% said they will not be influenced by any of these slogans. So, Mr. Dankwa, 24-hour economy is gaining traction. People are buying into it. From where you stand, that's what the temperature is revealing.
Yes. In fact, the story is also even better when you look at the party affiliation of people who are given this response.
Okay.
If you look at the MPP supporters, 11% of them prefer 24-hour economy.
This is of the NPP supporters.
Yes.
They are buying into the 24-hour economy suggestion by the NDC.
11% of them.
I see.
72% of them back digitization.
Okay.
7% of MPP back Alan Martin's GTP.
That's the Great Transformational Plan.
Yes. And 11% said none of them is attractive to them. If you come to the NDC, folks, 91% of NDC prefer 24-hour economy. 3% of NDC prefer digitalization.
And that was it. They didn't feature in the...
We have 5% saying that none of them.
Okay.
And 1% GTP. When we come to floating voters, which is key, 53% of floating voters prefer 24-hour economy. 16% of floating voters prefer digitalization.
Okay.
9% of floating voters prefer GTP. and 22% said none of them.
That's quite interesting because when you juxtapose the final results for example, the Movement for Change, Alan Tremanting, 7.3% of the final votes. When you come down to the Great Transformational Plan, that seems more popular than the candidate himself. How do you marry the two?
You see, there are people who may like policies but may not vote for the candidate.
Okay.
Because to vote for the candidate requires many things other than just the 24-hour economy.
Okay.
So there are myriad of issues that are taken into account by a voter before deciding. So you could see somebody supporting somebody's policy, but he may not vote for him. That is real.
All right. Let's move on to the next slide. And we can talk about the swing regions. Okay. No, so though John Dramani Mahama lost grounds in the central region, his dominance in the Greater Accra and Western region now stands at some 66%, with Vice President and flag bearer of the NPP, Dr. Bawumia, standing at 28%. So the swing regions also swinging in the direction of former President John Mahama.
Yes, very emphatic, especially Greater Accra is where we believe the biggest shock in the election will come from.
From the Greater Accra region.
Greater Accra.
Okay.
At the moment, 73% of Greater Accra intend to vote for John Mahama.
73%. Okay.
And 21% for Bawumia, 5% for Alan. Now, if you go to the central region, the race is much closer. It is 51 Mahama and 45 Bawumia. When you look at the data, Alan probably collapsed in the central region from 15% in January to 2%.
Oh, I see.
Those people who left Alan were originally MPP voters who were voting for Alan. They have now gone back home. That's why Bawumia made a huge recovery in the central region.
In the central region. Let me bring in Courage very quickly. Courage, what is... Oh, apologies. We've lost Courage on the telephone lines. Courage, if you're minded, do connect with us again and we'll talk some more about this. Okay, so that's how it stands at the moment with the swing region, central and the Greater Accra region. How was the leader for the New Force movement represented in the Greater Accra region? This is where he's dominant. What was the support for him in that in the Greater Accra region?
The Greater Accra region, let me just go to the specific regional numbers.
Sure, let's do that.
Okay. If you come to Greater Accra region, Nana Kwame Bediako, in fact, the region he gets most of his support from is Eastern region.
Eastern region?
Yes. Now, let's look at region by region.
Sure.
In Ashanti region, he gets only 1%.
Okay.
In Ahafo, he gets 1%. In Ashanti, he gets 2%. Remember, 2% in Ashanti region is not a small number.
Okay.
And then you have Bono, he gets 4% in Bono region. He gets 9% in Bono East. He gets Central, just 1%. Eastern, 5% in Eastern region. Alan on 11% in Eastern region. Greater Accra, he gets 1%. And remember, Greater Accra is quite big.
That's
so
right.
1% is not small number in Greater Accra. Northeast, he gets 2%. Northern, he gets nothing. OT, he gets 2%. Savannah, he gets nothing. Upper East, he gets nothing. Upper West, he gets 4%. Volta, he gets 2%. Western, he gets 2%. And Western North, 3%.
Okay, a very interesting split then.
Yes.
I mean, he's lagging behind in all the polls, but some significant percentages then. Courage joins us back on the telephone lines. Okay, let's run through John Dramani Mahama's numbers through the regions and then also Dr. Bawumia. Then we'll come to Alan Tremanting.
Now, let me just make a small comment here.
Sure.
22% of Bediako's votes come from Eastern region.
22%?
Yes.
Why is that?
Those who said they intend to vote for him, when you put them all together nationally, 22% of them are from the Eastern region. 17% of them from Ashanti region.
What is resonating there in these regions?
I don't know. But this is what people are telling us. Now, if you look at Bawumia, 28% of his votes come from Ashanti region. 12% Central region. And Eastern region contributes 13%.
I'm surprised by that. Eastern region, 13%. Flag bearer of the NPP, one would have expected more.
What I'm saying, if you put
All together.
the NPP's vote together,
Okay.
Eastern is contributing 13%.
Okay.
Ashanti is 28%.
Okay.
And if you come to John Mahama, 28% of his total votes that he's getting come from Greater Accra region. Ashanti, 10%. Central, 9%. Volta, 9%. Northern region, 8%.
Very interesting indeed. All right, let's move on with the slides and then look at some of the other issues that Ghanaians were most passionate about or were thinking about as far as these polls were concerned. Courage is back on the lines. Courage, in the central region, the movement for change has dropped significantly. Will you be taking, some measures in that regard to strengthen, your base there?
Thank you, Ellen. Most certainly, the campaign will study the report and then it will inform some strategic approaches. I mean, that is what these things are for. And for me, we are happy because this is dispassionate. This is coming from outside of the team. So it can give you a proper reflection of how you are doing. And then wisdom would have you just pick it up, look at it, and let it inform your strategic approaches going forward. So far, it's good.
All right, fantastic. Of course, Global Info Analytics, they're a wealth of information. We have the regional distribution of voters who would not vote. That's also significant. Yes. We move on to the next one that concerns... yes, how would you rate the performance of your MP? This one I'm quite interested in. When you hit the streets and you gather the thoughts of the voting population, did you get the sense that people actually, one, know who their MPs are, and two, really understand the mandate of their MPs in order to rate said performance? In
a lot of the cases, people vote the party colours in parliamentary elections.
That's right.
So if you look at the question we asked, we didn't mention the names. MP, your MP. So right. If you know him, you rate him. If you don't know him, you will say no opinion.
Me, my MP, for example, Adwa Safo. So if you had come to ask me, I'd have given you the rating, but that one is off record. So small digression.
So for those who don't have knowledge about the MP's performance, they will say no opinion.
Okay.
Those who have, they will say, oh, average, very good, excellent, or poor, very poor. So there's always an option for people who have no idea who the MP is to say, oh, I have no opinion.
Okay. So no opinion constituted 10%. Those who said that they would rate the performance of their NP as poor or very poor, 23%. Average, that got the lion's share, 35%. Very good or good, 22%. And 11% of the people you spoke with thought that their MPs were doing excellent.
Yes.
Was this concentrated in any particular areas?
No, this is the same spread. Okay. We did. So it doesn't matter where we went to ask the same questions.
Okay. That was the breakdown. Yes. All right. We'll move on with the analysis. Again, if you're watching us on Facebook, you can follow along. We've done that one. We move on to the next one. And of course, the regional breakdown of voters who wouldn't vote. We've discussed that. Let's move on to the next one. And then the issues that were quite topical that Ghanaians were focusing on in order to make their decision: jobs, corruption. Let's speak to that. Yes, I don't think we've got that on the screen, but we'll speak to that, yes.
If you speak to average Ghanaian, the top 4 issues on their lips today, number 1 is jobs. Jobs is number 1.
Jobs is number 1.
2 is the economy.
Yep.
3 is education. And 4, roads.
Roads.
So these are the top 4 issues.
Did corruption come at number 5?
No, I think it was maybe 6 or something down there.
I see, okay.
Because people see these educational issues, jobs, economy, roads, as more important than to dwell on the corruption matters.
So these are the things that are informing their decisions.
If they vote today, the state of jobs in the country, the state of economy, the state of education, the state of the roads, if they are positive about that, then that will give dividends to the government. If they are negative about the jobs, economy, and education, that will go against the government.
Well, time check. It is some 6 minutes to the top of the 9 a.m. Very shortly, we'll be wrapping up this conversation with Mr. Musa Dankwa. We also still have Courage Nobi on the telephone lines. He's the Director of Communications for the Movement for Change campaign. And we'll connect with Courage right about now, and then we'll wrap up this conversation. I know, Musa, you've got to go on to one of our sister stations to also talk about these metrics and parameters. Courage, I know you've been listening keenly to the discussions, and what Musa Dankwa is letting us know is that as far as jobs, economy, education and roads are concerned, this is quite high up on the list for Ghanaians. As you've been traveling the length and breadth of Ghana, are these the same issues that the Movement of Change has also been picking up on? And if you can lower your radio set for me, please, I'd be so grateful.
Okay, thank you very much, Helen. Is it okay?
Fantastic.
Awesome. Yeah, so again, I think it's consistent with the issues that we have been trumpeting. If you know, I'm sure in subsequent polls, Mr. Dankwa and team will update their questionnaire to include the jobs and cash economy, which is what we are moving with. You know, all that our campaign is about is creating an economy where you get a job to do in order to get cash in your pocket. You know, that is what we're about. So it means that if the poll is anything to go by, that message is consistent with what the people are looking for. And trust me, unemployment is a major issue across the board. It's part of the reason why a lot of young people gather to meet Alache Martin when we go.
Well, Courage, not to slide tackle you, but very quickly, Musa Dankwa says that the Great Transformational Plan is something that is quite popular amongst some Ghanaians. They're buying into it, the GTP plan. So the jobs for cash, I'm sure Ghanaians would want to learn more about it, but it would appear that the GTP plan is something that is already gaining momentum. Would it not be best to strengthen that messaging?
Almost certainly, but you know, the Great Transformational Plan is how we deliver the jobs and cash.
All right.
So what we need to do as a campaign is to make sure that the connection is strong, so that people can see that if we're talking about industrialization in the Great Transformational Plan, it is to be able to create jobs and cash. We are talking about private sector involvement in infrastructure development. It is to deliver jobs. If you're talking about the National Agricultural Revolution, it is to deliver jobs and cash. If we're talking about tourism modernization, okay, so yes, the Great Transformational Plan, it is the approach as to how we ensure that people get jobs so they can have cash to go about and to live their decent lives. So yes, it's great. We are glad to know that it's resonating. But again, for me, the takeout from all of this is that there's more work to be done by the campaign, you know, and also it lets us know that it is possible to achieve our objective of toppling the duopoly.
Courage, thank you so much for your time this morning. I'm sure you'll be in the studios sooner rather than later. We can talk some more about this jobs for cash. I'm sure Ghanaians want to know more, and you'll be expanding on that in due course. Do have a wonderful Tuesday. Courage Nobi is the Director of Communications for the Movement for Change campaign. We're wrapping up now with Musa Dankwa of Global Info Analytics. People are already asking, when are you going to be testing the pulse next? When can we expect another poll?
The next poll is due in July.
In July, okay.
Yes. And then the final poll before the elections, which our predictions will be based on, will come in November.
All right. Well, we're waiting on tenterhooks for this. And thank you so much for that preamble. I think it puts the issues into context, how it is that we come about these polls. It's no mystery. There's a method to the madness. We'll be getting more of your views right here on 3FM Sunrise, on 3FM 92.7. Mr. Dankwa, thank you again for your time.
It's my pleasure.
Time check. Time check, it is some 2 minutes to the top of the hour, 9 a.m. This is 3FM Sunrise on 3FM 92.7. A lot of you sending in your messages, your thoughts, your questions. Do keep them coming. On Facebook, the conversation is absolutely rife. Thank you to Faustina for collating and curating some of your responses. This one is coming from Awal Mohammed. He says, I strongly agree with Global Info Analytics. It's going to reflect on the upcoming elections. I can bet with my last 10 cities in my pocket right about now. Abu Yakubu Nyaba says Mahama deserves 63%, not 54%. Anyway, that's also a win for Mahama. Well, before Musa Dankwa took leave of us, he says there'll be 2 more polls conducted before the December 7th elections, one in July and one closer to time. This one also on Facebook. It's coming from Dagador Primus inter Paris. Hey. Okay, no matter who comes into power, this country would still be bleeding. Looking at how economically indebted we have sunk, I will only vote if the assurance is given as to the investigation and prosecution if anybody is found foul of the law. I'm developing apathy within the last 2 years. Seydou Issa says, just remember, JM is the next president. Alex Amo says, always, Mahama is in a comfortable lead. We have here Kwabna Isaac. He says, I disagree because the total of other aspirants aside this 4 will be more than 1%, and this will affect the figures that have been brought. We can certainly have Musa Dankwa's take on that. Joseph Texan on Facebook. Thank you, Joseph, for this message. He says, this is a very true reflection of the wishes of the masses. Musa Messi says, this is laughable. What do you think JM has done to deserve this? He says, you guys should think deep and stop laughing at the wrong side of your mouth. Continue dreaming. It will shock you. Wilberforce Bodo says John Mahama is going to win the next elections. Kingsley says victory is assured. It is settled. Who are you referring to, Kingsley? Ransford Boachi says it's 55.5% for JM. That's the weighted poll. We have some more of your comments also on X and beyond. We'll be getting into all of that in due course. Keep the thoughts coming. Keep your questions, your suggestions coming. It's the best breakfast show in all of the land. This is 3FM Sunrise on 3FM 92.7.
General assassinate, airport in my